first episode in what I hope will be a series of conversations with the UTech family. This will include our students, our faculty, staff, and also our alumni. And these will be, I hope, an inspirational series where you will learn more about what makes UTech so great. I'm happy to have my first guest, who is Dr. Peter Walker. He's a vice president, corporate vice president at Microsoft, responsible for engineering solutions, and he will tell us more about his role at Microsoft. Today, we're going to be speaking to Dr. Walker about his journey, which I hope you will find inspiring, and especially for our students. I believe, is an example of what you can achieve if you work hard and you focus on your passion. And of course, he's a UTech Knight, so he's also an example of what can be achieved as well. So, Dr. Walker, welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. It's an honor and indeed a privilege to join you on this inaugural series. And I think, from our early conversations, I'm sure you will inspire indeed the UTech staff and a generation of students to come. Thank you.
Thank you. So, you are indeed a son of the soil, a son of Jamaica, St. Mary, and we will talk about St. Mary, but you're joining me from the United States, where you also reside. So let's start with your
Yes.
current role at Microsoft. You're the corporate vice president for engineering solutions. Tell me more about your day-to-day activities and your role.
Absolutely delighted to do that. So, as a corporate vice president at Microsoft, first of all, it's quite an honor and a privilege to be at such a prestigious company that really has at its core its mission to empower every individual and an organization on the planet to achieve more. That is a compelling vision. And the organization that I'm a part of, Industry Solution Engineering, is focused on working with Microsoft most strategic customers to achieve more. And that part of that, what that entails is that we work with customers who have strategic and significant engineering problems. We work with them to innovate and co-engineer those solutions and then bring them to market sooner than otherwise would be possible. And this, of course, involves moving to the cloud. This involves AI exploration and so many other emerging spaces that are happening around the world. Finances, healthcare, government are all sectors in which my organization work very closely with customers to co-engineer and innovate for their solutions. It's one of those things where you say, I grew up in St. Mary, but I have lived in many parishes in Jamaica. I was born in Kingston. I spent my early childhood in Westmoreland, which I know you also have close roots there with my grandmother. I spent some time in St. Catherine. And then finally, I ended up spending most of my young childhood in St. Mary, close to Highgate, in a place called Lewisburg. Most people can't even find Lewisburg on the map. But what I did find there is a teacher who inspired me. I happened to be, I love learning. And I had the principal of that elementary school that I was a part of, Mr. McNaught, who really took me under his wings and exposed me my hunger for learning. He facilitated that. He gave me early access to books that when they came to the library around technical books, for example, How Things Work was one of those series that used to come to the library. And Mr. McNaughton knew I loved that, and he would ensure that I have access to it. He'd also invite me to his home and give me access to his encyclopedias, which which kid read encyclopedia, but I did, right? And so I really got this sense that there are teachers who recognized my love of learning and invested in me. And when I went to high school, it was a similar thing. I went to St. Mary High School, and Mr. McNaught was very instrumental in getting me to St. Mary High School as well. And at St. Mary High School, it was a similar thing. I found teachers, especially one teacher who stood out in my mind, stands out still in my mind, Mr. Dyer, who, when he learned about my love for my love for engineering and electronics, Mr. Dyer said, not just me, there were like 3 or 4 of us in the class. He said, okay, you guys want to learn this thing? How far do you want to go? I'm going to go with you. And he exposed us to things that even when I was at grad school at Brown, I was relearning because Mr. Dyer really believed that there was no limit in terms of when a student have hunger and wanted appetite to learn, that he was prepared to go with me. So yes, my early childhood is really dotted with teachers and a curiosity and a love of learning, and people invested in me, and I'm excited to really honored to have them as part of my story.
Indeed, and then you decided to attend um, the greatest institution that we all know and love, CAST, now UTech. Yes. Why did you choose CAST at the time, and why engineering?
And this is, again, going back to Mr. Dyer, right? Who inspired me to love electronics. And when I was in fifth form and looking ahead, and I thought about going to sixth form and I said, what's the value of going to sixth form? When I'm done with sixth form, really, this is just me thinking, of course, I couldn't apply myself. I couldn't get a job with that. And it would prepare you to go to university if you want to go to UE and do your bachelor's in science and medicine, etc. But it didn't prepare me in a way that I thought was practical. And so UTech had that brand, and I had an uncle who did chemical engineering there at UTech, and so I had the privilege of kind of seeing how he operated and to also have his counsel. And so UTech, because of or CAST back then, because of its really practical grounding in preparing students for the marketplace, that was an appeal for me. And so I got into UTech slash CAST, 2 weeks late, because back then it was really hard to get your results at the end of this June, July, and then get acceptance. But my results, thank God, was impressive enough that the school decided, hey, we're going to try and make a space for you. And that's how I ended up UTech. It was really grounded on the premise that the school prepared me for applying my learning. And I must say it indeed delivered on that throughout my life.
Absolutely. And while you were at UTech, is this where you discovered your love for computers? Because you developed a computer graphics monitor, I believe, from scratch.
So, at UTech, um, one of the things we had, again, grounded in this very practical sense of how engineering should be done, was that students had to build a final year project and build something, right? Not just write about it. And my team and I chose to build back then what was really, looking back, is like this crazy idea to build a computer graphics monitor from scratch. This means if anyone who's involved in this space, means you have to understand how to program the ROMs to generate character. You have to understand how to do the rasterization, the vertical flyback, horizontal scanning, keyboard input, everything. And we decided that that was what we wanted to do. It was one of the most challenging thing I'd ever done. But I learned so much, how to debug timing, how to make timers work, and to understand the limits of RC timers and all that. Then we also had to, to get parts, we had to scrap the computer. The school had an old I think is an IBM computer with all the AND gates and OR gates and NOR gates. We had some supplies from the labs, but a lot of what we needed, we had to essentially remove them from all computers. And that, may sound like, hey, it's a regressive thing compared to, hey, you get the parts. But I learned so much in that process. And that project, when it came to judging, it was judged by someone from the University of West Indies, and that judge turns out Mr. Walling, Tony Walling, when he saw what we had done, and he was so impressed. He was the head of the electronics unit at the university. He has since passed away. And the electronics unit is one of those departments that works with the most advanced scientific research instruments at UE, mass spectrometers, electron microscope, all the kind of spectrographic instruments you need to keep a research division going. And he said, Peter, I'd love for you to come work with me. And that is how I transitioned from that project really shaping my career to get me to UE. And at UE, I loved every moment of it because I got to go deep in the physics, deep in the electronics, radio technology, everything that the university had put through at me. Networking, ultimately, we actually helped establish some of the pioneer networking architecture within university, ArcNet, if nobody can remember that, and Token Ring. So yes, it's all builds on one thing of another. And this is hopefully something I hope as your students hear, that the nature of life is that, diligence in one space really translates to shaping the next opportunity. Revealed in how Tony Walling saw what I did and invited me to university. And ultimately that led to me getting my PhD and doctorate on the sponsorship of the University of West Indies.
Indeed. No, I'm listening to you, Peter, and I'm thinking you did all of that in around 1985, and it, no, no, but I'm sure everyone can see that you are still fairly young, Peter. That you're still fairly young, so we won't give away too much. But I mention it because I'm just amazed at what you were doing at that time compared to where computing has gone now. We're in the era of artificial intelligence. Are you equally amazed at the feats that we've had around computing?
I am. And one of the things I look back and say this jokingly to myself, they say that the line between genius and insanity is a very thin one, right? Um, and back in the day, one of the things that I had to do, I would take every money I could save and I would go to Kingston Bookshop. I'd buy every book I can on electronics, on physics, etc. Because I'm just so eager to learn, so eager to apply myself. One of the things I used to do when I was at UTech, and in fact, I did it through pretty much all my academic career until I got to grad school. I think it was just too much. I would, I would get the textbook that was scheduled for the courses that was coming up during the summer, and I would read them. I'd kind of teach myself a lot about it. So when it was in class, I'd be kind of relearning the thing again, and I'd sometimes be able to ask questions that was more insightful than just hearing for the first time. I say that to say because today, the access to all this knowledge is at everyone's fingertip. And the kind of thing that a student can do with a Raspberry Pi, a laptop, if I had access to that today, back in my day, so to speak, one of two things: I'd be highly distracted, or I would turn out to be a genius of sorts. And so I believe that this is a moment where the innovation that students at any institution with a laptop, with a simple Linux machine, can run AI models, can develop AI models, can experiment. The sky's the limit. It's really, truly a moment where technology has been democratized in a way that has never been before. For example, if back in my day, if I wanted to build something, I had to go get transistors and soda iron and so much physical assets you have to get in order to do something.
Mm.
That's not the case today. If a student wants to, or someone wants to do innovation, all you need is a computer. And that computer, such as a Raspberry Pi, costs 35 US dollars, and I'm sure you can get it in eBay for even less. So it is truly a moment where the innovation arc and door is just wide open, and it should be seized.
Indeed. And so, apart from being a corporate professional engineer, you're also an entrepreneur. And I've heard you talk about your entrepreneurship when you created Spawn Labs, and I could see the passion, and I can tell it was a tough time for you, but also it was your passion. Um, Tell me more about your entrepreneurship and being a founder of Spawn Labs, and through Spawn Labs, you pioneered what a lot of people take for granted now, which is gaming online and other interesting developments that came out of your company.
Certainly. You know, the back to my days of UTech, the excuse me, the challenges I had with building that computer graphics monitor um, really reinforced something to me that once you put your mind to something, um, there's no barrier. I mean, there's a lot of innovation we had to do to overcome all the kind of challenge, resource challenges, technical challenges, access to learning material and all this kind of things. With Spawn Labs, I was at IBM Research at the time, and I was working actually on what I thought was my dream job. I had gotten to IBM Research. I was working on building supercomputers, and it was the next generation version of IBM supercomputer, which was actually based on a technology called InfiniBand. At least it was one of the technologies being considered to connect the processors in this massive system. And my experience earlier at a startup in Austin, Texas, was that we helped pioneered a lot of the work that's done in InfiniBand. And so I was recruited to IBM Research to actually help them explore this more. When I was at IBM, I had a conversation with my son um, as I watched him playing his video game, and I asked him, I said, Matt, my son is Matthew, I said, what if you could actually have your friends play this video game with you and without them having to have a game console like you, just have it stream like Netflix or any other videos? And his excitement was just unbelievable. He said, Dad, that'd be so cool. That'd be amazing. And his enthusiasm said to me that there got to be something here. So I started looking into this. And again, because I had such deep expertise in networking and understanding about latency and all the ways to reduce latency in an operating system, as you would need to do in a supercomputer, I wondered how much of this could translate into gaming, because gaming is all about latency reduction, eliminating latency so that people can actually play as if they're in the same room. And so I started looking at this, and increasingly I got strong validation from anyone I had a conversation said, if you could do it, if it would be a good thing. But we don't think it can be done. And for me, that part around, hey, we don't think it can be done, that was a challenge for me. I have seen before where at UTech, a CAS, where building a computer graphics monitor, many of my colleagues felt it could not be done, right? And I've come across other situations where it was not the first time at a startup when we were working on so many challenges. It was like, could this be done? It's always we have to be pushing the envelope. And IBM Research is the same thing. So for me, the draw to say, hey, can I solve this problem, which people find valuable, but possibly insurmountable, was a draw like no other. And so I started working on this thing, and I worked on it for years before the company was finally acquired in 2011. And in 2008, in Austin, Texas, we were recognized for the pioneering work we had done as a company, Spawn Labs, in really introducing this notion of cloud gaming. That's what it's called today, to the market.
Hmm.
I'm still very proud of that, and my colleagues who worked along with me, including my co-founder, who is a Jamaican. And I say that to say, you know, um, there is a notion sometimes that in the world of entrepreneur, particularly engineering, that blacks and minorities don't um, participate as much. And I understand why. The barriers to enter in that space and to raise capital and all that is just phenomenal. It's just off the charts. But having said that, with the commitment to drive, I hope that those who are listening can say, "Hey, there are two black men, two black people from Jamaica who helped to pioneer a whole new industry." Today, if you go to Microsoft, xCloud, you have Sony, PlayStation Now, and when Google was running um, what is called its own technology. I forgot the name of it now because they have since shut it down and is in the process of selling that to possibly to Netflix. It's real for me. It's this notion again to say, hey, innovation is possible no matter where you're from, and imagine.
Absolutely, and so we spoke about Spawn Lab, but it's not the only company you formed, right? There's also Kazam, which allowed for music sharing. Yes. Yes, go on.
I asked my a conversation with my one of my partners in business who helped David, who was I actually lead Spawn Labs. He's a musician. I don't play music, and by the way, I still don't play very much video games. Right? To me, it was the problem of solving
Mm,
the problem of allowing people to have an experience. I I'm not a musician. I know a little bit of music, but I don't consider myself to be a musician by any stretch of imagination. And we asked the same question. David said to me as we were after the acquisition of GameStop, of Spawn Labs by GameStop, could we do the same thing for music that we did for gaming? And I said, let me do some research. And
mm, mm.
we could, but it would be a tough one. And it turns out that music is far more challenging than gaming,
Wow.
far more. Which many people would not understand because people who play video games think, Twitch, you click these buttons and you have to be split second timing. But when you play music, the fidelity of the air and any little variance that happens, any lag, if you're a drummer, it is so much more profoundly amplified than it is compared to even video games. And so, I say that of all the work that I've ever done, even working on supercomputing, that building Jam Kazam and building that platform is by far the more complex and difficult thing I've ever worked on.
Indeed. I mean, and it sounds like it was a challenging part of your life story, but also an exciting period as well. And also one where, what fascinates me about the two companies that you created is that these are things that many people take for granted now. Gaming online, we absolutely see that as normal. Streaming music live, that's again something that is seen as a very normal thing. So you were solving problems at the time that have become mainstream. And I'm sure you're very proud of that accomplishment along with your business partners at the time. So here's the question I have for you, Dr. Walker. Some of my students might be watching this and they'll have ideas. You've met my students. We have Microsoft Day, which you have been supporting for the last 2 years. And you know that the students at UTech are very innovative. Uh, but a question I'm sure will be on their mind is how can they stay in Jamaica and still get the level of support, financial and otherwise, to pursue IT companies like your companies, Spawn Lab and Jam Kazam? Can it be achieved in Jamaica, in your opinion, or do they need to be overseas in a country like America where you have access to venture capital and you can, turn your ideas into real businesses?
There are some ideas that requires capital to scale. And so being a country like the United States, it makes sense if you want to invest in building a business. For example, you will notice today, um, Anthropic and so many other companies are in the AI space. St. Mary can sell his or her goods more effectively and easily on the market in Kingston. What does that look like? How do I build it out? That is far more within reach today than it ever was. If an accounting solution or a solution that requires AI in terms of, let's say you want to have a chat bot or something interacts with a customer, that today is something that can be built very much from locally with very limited resources from pretty much anywhere in the world, and especially I would say in Jamaica. Now, there's some advantages of being in Jamaica, where it's, in my organization, for example, our team is as people around the world. But one of the things that we do is that we tend to work in a time zone aligned fashion with customers. So we have customers in the United States. Our engineer organization will partner or set up what we call a crew of people who will work with that organization, and we will try to optimize it to make sure it's time zone aligned. So East Coast, West Coast, as case might be. If we have organization in Europe, we have people in Europe, Australia and Singapore, etc. We have people. Jamaica's proximity to United States is so companies can say, hey, I want to hire someone in Jamaica to build a web platform, to optimize a model, to build a chatbot. Increasingly, it doesn't matter where you are, right? And so what they're looking for is quite often is a demonstrated competence. And so if you've done a project at the university and you have a GitHub profile and that is really a door opener like no other, to step this space and to help yourself in accessing US based salary or compensation while living in paradise in Jamaica. Who could ask some more? I don't know.
Absolutely. And so, at UTech, we have been talking about the knowledge processing, outsourcing KPOs as the next big step for us as a country, where we want to create jobs that employ our technology students, our engineering students, right here on the island of Jamaica. So, Dr. Walker, I want to go back to St. Mary because You are a son of St. Mary. I know you've lived in other parts of Jamaica, but certainly St. Mary High School was quite an impactful part of your life, and you're now giving back. You are doing some exceptional things at St. Mary High School in terms of enhancing their IT infrastructure. Tell us a bit about that.
So I would want to be sure to acknowledge my wife. I think the greatest gift that St. Mary's School gave me was my wife. My name is Lisa, and absolutely, I know I would not be anywhere successful without her partnership in my life. One of the things that we both have a great desire is to, out of gratitude, we were both raised by our grandparents, and a couple of years ago, back in our 2017, 18, I think it was, St. Mary's School had a fire that destroyed the computer lab. And we'd always been thinking about, hey, how do we give back, to the places that have shaped us and prepared us for life so well. And then that year, I think it was 2019, the Governor General invited us to Jamaica. A friend of ours was a friend connected us, and we were asked to become what is now referred to as I Believe ambassadors. And the Governor General pretty much said, hey, you pick a project. The thesis of IBI is that, is whatever, what the Governor General says, whatever is wrong with Jamaica can be fixed by what is right with Jamaica. And that includes our youth, includes, corporate, included talent, diaspora, And so it was really quite an honor to be connected with him and to share, in that belief. And so we picked St. Mary's School as, well, we're going to work on that as a part of our IBI sponsorship. And when we started the journey, we started, maybe we'll just help at the lab. And then we began to look at it and say, no, there's so much more that is just lacking. When we look at where the school was relative to when we were in terms of education outcome and the friction around retaining great teachers and all that, recognize a more comprehensive effort was needed. And so we got together with the class of 1982, which we are a part of, and to discuss a vision around transforming the school. And structure, right? And we recognize that once you have the computers, then we can talk about how the school applies that in terms of driving educational outcome. Because all infrastructures that is there, whether it be computer, networking, etc., it's a means to an end. And for us, the end is how do you measure an improved outcome in scores in terms of students' readiness for the marketplace, but clearly the technology provides a way to connect the school with resources like remote teaching and all the other kind of capabilities that you can do. So we started that, and when we started the journey, we got design for the network to be done. We scoped the lab, etc. And to date, I think we spent, probably close to $250,000 US on that project in partnership with others. The campus now has a top tier fiber optic network connecting the various buildings and Wi-Fi networks. It has close to 100 new computers. That is a new. And we have seen and we have heard the testimonies of what that has done to the school and to the teachers. And we are working, even with Microsoft, to help bring teachers in proximity to STEM teaching so they can deliver courses in computer science and in the whole tech space much more easy, because again, this is what that infrastructure enables, right? And so it's a journey. The school is on. We set their goal, frankly, to be as good as the best, and the best, as we understood it at the time, was Jamaica College. And from what we have learned, St. Mary's School is as good as that institution in terms of that infrastructure capability. Now, the next step is, of course, to get teaching and students and others to engage as good as the best in the country. But it's a journey. And this is the nature of, I would say one of the things that going back to my days of CAS and St. Mary School, just my whole upbringing in Jamaica, and my wife and I, is that, we do believe that whatever your hands find to do, you should do it with all your might, right? Do it with excellence. And so we engage with, these initiatives with a genuine sense that we want to leave, and others who come in contact with can look back and say, hey, this was done well, and it serves as an inspiration for others to do just as well.
Absolutely. And the Jamaican diaspora has been giving back to Jamaica significantly. And what you are doing at St. Mary High School is just remarkable. And of course, we look forward to welcoming St. Mary High School students to UTech. We offer over 100 programs here. So I'm sure that the technology that you're providing at the school will spur some of them on to pursuing careers in computing. And in terms of going back to my question around your entrepreneurial profile, at UTech we have the Technology Innovation Center, which allows us to incubate startup companies. So, when our students have entrepreneurial ideas, we can incubate them here on campus. But the TIC is also open to entrepreneurs across Jamaica who have ideas and need a space to support them to develop this into a business. So we are an entrepreneurial institution as much as we are technology driven. But I want to end. Thank you. And I want to end, Dr. Walker, by asking you about what's on everyone's mind, which is artificial intelligence. Where do you see this going? Because it's here to stay. I think that much we have to accept. But what are your views, Dr. Walker, on how we can maximize the goodness of artificial intelligence, but at the same time put in sufficient safeguards to keep us safe from nefarious activities that could be pursued through artificial intelligence?
Yeah, so that question, is one that is top of mind for pretty much everyone in the world today. How do you balance this disruptive innovation with the potential risk? One of the risks that I just speak to the risk first in terms of what can be done, and based on what we have seen happen, is, for example, early on we saw a lot of misinformation, right, in the United States and around the world that was spurred on by with the help of artificial intelligence, amplified by social media that recommended certain things to people, right? And that was, in fact, a lot of those algorithms were driven by AI in the back end. So one could say AI amplified the negative effects of those misinformation campaigns. That risk remains, and even more so now because you can see some of what AI can do in terms of generating videos and so a big part of what I think needs to be done to safeguard a nation, and you've seen in other places, there is almost like you need to have a course, a civics course around information evaluation, how to decide whether something is true, how do you assess it, right? Elevate the critical thinking of people. That needs to start. I couple this with say one of the most informative courses I took at UTech, and I did not recognize how strategic that would be in my life, was a class called Communications in Engineering. And I took it because it was required, right? Class I ever took, how to write a letter, how to structure your points, your arguments, such a way that it flows. all through my life that has made a difference, in terms of how my career progressed and in terms of how I was able to communicate my ideas. I think something like that is needed at a national level, and for schools to introduce that, elevated critical thinking. So that's one on the safeguard side. With respect to the opportunity and the disruption, um, there is, there's there is, I saw something recently posted by Bill Gates that says in 5 years, everyone will have a personal AI, right? An AI that can assist them. That is a massive statement, in terms of what it means. The question then becomes, what does it mean to have a personal AI in Jamaica?
Yes, exactly.
And I think that can only be answered by people ideally in Jamaica, because if you don't do if you don't have that local exploration of what does it mean in terms of delivering experiences that is curated for based on local understanding, then essentially you would have outsourced it to someone else. And then that becomes a problem, right? Because then, you're essentially being managed from elsewhere. The opportunity in healthcare, in finance, in business, in agriculture, in farm, there are so many opportunities that around which AI can enhance business processes, enhance the experience that users have. Satya likes to talk about this experience he had in India, where they had multiple languages, and how saw a demo of a farmer trying to access resources from the Ministry of Agriculture, and not understanding how to fill out a form. Essentially, an app was developed with an AI that he could just talk to the thing, and the thing would fill out largely the form, and have it basically ready for submission. I think those are the kind of things that when you ask in Jamaica, Jamaican government for agriculture, for small businesses are trying to enable access to capital, access to markets. How does AI help with making that easy so that people don't have to go click, 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 click and understand a lot of complexity? How do you explain those things? So I think the opportunity is rich, amazingly rich. And I think a place like UTech can play a pivotal role. And you said something again, back to this innovation hub. You know, I was just looking at my alum magazine from Brown, and Professor Hazeltine is his name. He teaches a class at engineering department around startups. That class has been one of the most in-demand class at Brown for and and I feel like at UTech, a similar kind of curating or sponsorship around, hey, we're gonna show you how to build a business, right? How to raise capital, how to frame it, how to get your documents and all that, and then connect capital with those opportunities. I think that also is a great opportunity that the school can leverage today.
Absolutely, and we have the Joan Duncan School of Entrepreneurship, Ethics, and Leadership as well. So students can pursue a degree in entrepreneurship, and as well as the Technology Innovation Center for incubation. Well, Dr. Walker, it's been amazing speaking to you, and thank you so much for sharing your story, which is a very inspiring story. You know, a young man from Jamaica, and in your current role as a corporate vice president at Microsoft, but also an entrepreneur developing innovative technology that today many of us take for granted. So I believe we're going to try and take some questions from our online audience. I'm just looking to my team who are here to see if we have any questions for you, Dr. Walker. Um, if if not, oh, I think they're coming with them. So we so I'm just waiting to. Okay. All right, so we've got a very interesting one here, Dr. Walker. Well, first of all, thanks to those who've joined us for this live conversation with Dr. Walker. And I've got a question here. Um, it's asking, I'm trying to paraphrase it. A civics, should we have a civics course in how to evaluate the accuracy of information? Does, you get that? You get where that was going? A civics course
Yes,
in how to
that's
evaluate.
yes,
Yes.
I agree. Yes, and it's really, I should have coupled my answer with the fact that increasingly, as AI can do a lot of the mechanical things that we normally do, the premium that human beings bring to the table is, in fact, the ability to think critically and to think differently. Because, you know, if, if, if an AI can detect and see fraud or see something or operate more efficiently at you than 99.9% of the time, then the question becomes, where is the value that you and I bring in that process? And it's usually that we can take a perspective, we can take a step back, we can look at things much more broadly than quite often an AI can do. We can perceive implications, and then we can, hopefully use that to inform the actions that comes next. So the critical thinking is important to kind of detect truth and error, but increasingly that's where the value is going to be in terms of how when we engage in an artificial um, um, intelligence-centered society.
So there's a whole sort of question around ethics, right? Yes. I don't know if you work for Microsoft, so you may have seen some news around how artificial intelligence has created some inaccuracies in the news feed from Microsoft.
I've seen the buzz on it. Yes.
Yes. So there's a whole discussion there to be had around, as you said, the sort of ethics of artificial intelligence. But it's here to stay, as you say. So we have to just find solutions for these challenges as they appear. I've got another question here. Um, it says, how did you integrate your entrepreneurial activities into your school activities? How could you recommend one balance these two things efficiently? Um, I don't. Were you going to
Hmm.
school at the same time, Peter, as you were an entrepreneur?
I
But I
was
guess you had
not.
to balance other things like family and all the
Yes, I
rest of
had
it.
to balance work and life. So, for example, when I did Spawn Labs, I left IBM research so I could focus on that because one of the things that IBM required that you can't file a patent while you work for IBM research, right? Because you get exposed to so many things that, from IBM's point of view, it's unlikely that any idea you have is genuinely yours. So I left IBM and I started working as a contractor. So while I could work on Spawn Labs. And so my nights and weekends with my co-founder was what we spent. I was working sometimes in 100 hours a week because I'd work 50, 60 hours of work in my day job. And then we'd work nights and weekends, another 40, 60 hours, right? It's, you have to believe in what you're doing to do that. But that's the way we had to do it. And you had, again, because you're going to raise capital, you have to show investor some amount of progress. You can't just come with an idea and say, hey, we're trying to raise capital. So we knew we had to demonstrate, evidence of progress to the point to be able to raise capital. I think as a student, now it's different. As I come back to what I said before, it's easier now than ever because of the cloud, because of how mature networking is and how connected businesses are, for you to be able to have an idea, demonstrate, and to build a prototype, a proof of concept, show it to a business, and get quick feedback and see if that business is willing to pay for it. That is one of the fastest way to ensure that you do the right thing. You got to get your someone to say, I'm willing to pay for it. And in fact, that's one of the things that we did with Small Labs. One of the first investment I made was to do a market survey to ask people how much they pay for a service like that. And the signals were good. That they would say, I think it was like $30 or $35 they would be willing to pay. And when I did the analysis in terms of what it costs in terms of infrastructure, in terms of streaming, etc., that was enough to make the business work. Right. So again, getting signals from the market that they're willing to pay for your services quickly is something that again you can do as a student, nights and weekends, but it's nothing like it.
Indeed, indeed. That's a really good question on balance, right? So yes, but
I'm not sure when you're doing a
have I
startup,
broken you?
frankly, whether there's much balance in your life. There is, but as a student, listen, Bill Gates, I think started at Harvard. You had Michael Dell at UT Texas. You have Zuckerberg was Harvard as well. None of them completed their course. I keep in mind your education at an institution is a means to an end. And if you have an idea, an engineering, a solution that the market says it needs, then by all means, go for it. I mean, I am not one to say, hey, you necessarily need to stay and complete, because the evidence suggests that that's not necessarily true. So again, the institution may worry a little bit, I know the Kevin, but the truth is you'll come back with rich endowment to the institution and says, thank you for giving me the space to be creative and to explore and prove my value to the world.
Indeed, and I hope many of them do. So you are certainly giving back to UTech, and I want to just express my gratitude on behalf of the entire UTech family for what you've been doing through Microsoft Day. This year it was bigger. It was over 2 days actually, and we look forward to the third stage in next year, along with the many other activities that we want to continue doing with you and Microsoft. The next question I have here is, what one great advice would you give to a young IT student interested in working at Microsoft?
Working at Microsoft. Um, so one of the things that I think when in an interview that Microsoft looks for is evidence that you can demonstrate initiative. It's one of the things that I look for personally. And initiative again comes down to when you face challenges, particularly technical challenges or resource challenges or whatever it is. How did you approach it? How did you solve the problem? Right? That mindset that says, "Hey, when I run into difficulties, I innovate. I choose to innovate. I invest to innovate." To the degree that you can demonstrate that, not just Microsoft, I assure you, any company will say, I'd love to have you on my team, right? Because that is, I talked about this when I was at UTech. It comes down to what I call a founder mindset. And companies need people who um, um, will help them solve problems and create new value. And that is one of the best ways to demonstrate it. So again, I go back to say, hey, when you look at if you're in tech, when I look at your GitHub profile, if you're in other lines of businesses or areas within the university, because Microsoft has many places, accounting, finance, that you want could work, but there needs to be evidence that says this person is someone who solved problems when they come across it.
Absolutely, and I think that's why, well, both of us are engineers, and that's what I like about engineering. That's the brief, right? Solve a problem, solve a difficult problem. In my case, it was several years in aerospace industry, and in your case, it's computing. And actually, engineering now is all about computing. I remember most of the problems I was trying to solve in the aerospace industry was through using computer technology, and advanced simulation tools, high performance computing to solve really difficult design problems for jet engines. So, So those are definitely key skills. But you know, I'm of course clearly biased, but I think engineering is a really good career choice because of the skills, you know, the problem solving skills that you're kind of programmed to always want to solve difficult problems. But Dr. Walker, I want to thank you so much. There are a few more comments coming through online, but of course, you know, this video will be there for others to watch at their convenience. But I just want to express my gratitude for joining me on the President's Riverside chat. You know, it's been, you know, we've spoken so many times, but I never get tired of hearing your story. I find it so inspirational. You know, this small island called Jamaica, the level of talent that we produce, you know, even if the achievements are outside of Jamaica, the benefits to Jamaica are immense. You know, and we're so grateful for you, having you here, and of course, extremely proud that you are a UTech Knight. You know, and you know, we look forward to working with you, and you know, I'm sure you will continue to give back to Jamaica. So, thank you so much, Dr. Walker. I'll let you have the final word before we close out.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Kevin, Dr. Brown, for this opportunity. Yes, I acknowledge that many of the things I've done have been done outside of Jamaica. But my hope is that to anyone listening or watching, they'll see that it's rooted in what I did in Jamaica. My mindset was not one that was framed when I came to the United States. It was rooted in teachers and others at the university, at a CAS, my Lewisburg Elementary School and high school. And I believe that that is accessible to everyone today. And so my hope is that as you're inspired to pursue your dreams, just remember, dig deep with your roots where you are, and then, the sky's the limit.
Absolutely. So I just want to end by thanking those who've joined in, and but also thanks to my team, my hardworking team here, for putting this together. The first in a series of chats with me, and then you know, I look forward to speaking to a range of individuals on this series, students, alumni, and also you know, friends of UTech as well. So thanks to the marketing team led by Mr. Ivor Bennett, to LTSU, to our staff and students from the Communications, Arts and Technology program, and everyone who's been involved in putting this production on. I'm grateful for your support, and we look forward to doing this again very soon. So look out for the next President's Riverside chat. Thank you.
Thank you.